Hello and welcome to the Half Court Press podcast, the Omaha World-Herald. I'm Wilson Moore, joined by Jon Walker, as always. Eventful week in college basketball, particularly in the state of Nebraska. I think more
Yeah,
so for one team than the other. But we'll talk about both Nebraska and Creighton as we always do. Jon, how are you today?
man, I'm good. I went to the Outland Trophy award dinner last night. That was a really cool experience. Um, yeah, but so I'm now snowed into my apartment because it like continued to snow throughout the night. Isn't that nuts? I don't know what the snow's like out that way, but I got a good amount here. So maybe I'll go build a snowman or something. I don't know. How are you, Wilson?
I'm doing well. Yeah, we I don't think we've gotten quite as much here in Lincoln. But we're going to, which is why
Yeah.
I'm headed to Iowa a day early to avoid that. I only got my hotel for one night, but a friend of mine came in clutch, so I'm crashing on a couch tonight before the hotel Friday. It's these are, I think we cover college basketball. We hear a lot of, coach speak, and we hear, talks about making adjustments. And that's what we in our jobs have to do sometimes too.
Yeah, it's just always good to at the end of the day go back to our culture and be able to
Yeah.
just really focus in and be able to rely on our training because that's obviously, that's who we are, is who we train to be. So, um, Wilson Moore, man of adjustments.
Well,
Oh my goodness.
should we talk
Yes.
about the actual college basketball that has happened
And
in the
I
past week?
guess, I guess, yeah, we should. You wanna we should probably sweep Creighton out of the way first
All right, yeah, we can.
because we got a big one.
Yeah,
Creighton with a couple of big wins. I say big, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe not like on the stat sheet always, but the way in which this team won its two games this week, beating Providence, short-handed Providence, might I add. I don't want it to seem like Creighton beat a Providence team at full strength. Obviously, everyone knows that Bryce Hopkins is out for the year with a torn ACL, and we kind of all had questions on how Providence was going to respond. They were either going to come into Omaha and crumble in their first game without Bryce, or they were going to be uber galvanized. And I think we saw a little bit of the struggle maybe through the first 10 minutes of the game. They never really had an answer for Ryan Kalkbrenner. How would you, losing one of your big men? Um, but then they really got going, and I think we've seen since then that Devin Carter's a guy who's going to try and keep them afloat, and is very capable of doing that. And so that was the biggest win because even though the most important game in the Big East is the next one, Wilson. Um, the Jays went to Chicago and played DePaul. I don't think anybody expected it to be close. It wasn't close, and that was just kind of the offense that we expected to see. They scored on 16 of their first 24 possessions. And it was like, okay, this is the team from a month ago, the team that beat Alabama, the team that put 109 up on Central Michigan. And that was the first time I really think since the beginning of December that we've seen them hit on all cylinders like that offensively. Mind you, it was DePaul. Um, but yeah, I think the way in which they won both those games last week was probably really good for them. And I'm sure some of the fans that I've seen discourse from over the past month, I'm sure that they it was a welcome sight for them too.
yeah, it kind of feels like Creighton needed that stretch of schedule, like that, you know, like like they needed that tune up to kind of get,
Yeah.
okay, let's so they can say, okay, this is what we need to look like, they can kind of get that feel of, going back to what they know they can do well, what they haven't been doing well recently, and just kind of, get that feeling again and kind of regain some of the momentum as they sort of stumbled
Yeah.
over the week or two previous.
Yeah, and they're gonna need it. I mean, their next three games are St. John's, which is, I know everyone feels differently about Rick Pitino. I mean, the last year to this year, um, the thick, like the middle of the Big East is so much better than it was a year ago or has been over the past few years, really. And programs like St. John's are exactly why. Um, I mean, Pitino has done last year to this year a heck of a job kind of getting them along. They've really thrown some punches at teams, not literally, but they've got their cuts in so far this year for sure. And they're not going to come into Omaha and lay down. I don't think any Rick Pitino team would, regardless if he was still in Iona. But yeah, they work the portal. It'll be a big test to start out a pretty rough 3-game stretch. It's St. John's Saturday at CHI Health Center, and then a 2-game road trip. The Jays will be on the road like Tuesday through Saturday next week, essentially, because they're at UConn on Wednesday in stores, and then they're not even going to waste their time coming back to Omaha because they play Seton Hall in Newark on Saturday. So yeah, pretty. If this was a breath of fresh air, I'd say hold your breath through the next week and a half because it'll be a doozy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I really couldn't help myself, truthfully. But in the waning moments of this 30-point win over DePaul, turn on Peacock to see a pretty historic night in PBA.
And first of all, I'm impressed you have Peacock. Like,
Well,
I
so I have my girlfriend's mom's log.
okay,
so
okay.
so yeah, I didn't get roped into paying for Peacock, but I have my girlfriend's mom's
All right.
login. So shout out Christina.
But yes, the the eyes of the world were on Lincoln, Nebraska at the end
Yeah.
of Tuesday night, at least the eyes of those who have Peacock. And they saw a pretty impressive, crazy, wild night at PBA. I mean, just the atmosphere around it, you could kind of tell like when the crowd started believing,
Yeah.
it was in the second half. You could tell Nebraska was just juiced from the very beginning. Like
Yeah.
a minute and a half into the game, there's a loose ball. Jawan Gary dives on the floor for it. They call timeout, and like the bench jumps up and kind of converges onto the floor. Josiah Alec was jumping up in the air. Like you could tell they were feeling it. And then, they ended the late in the first half. Nebraska had that 13-0 run that put them up
Yeah. Sam
11 go.
Hoiberg, man.
Yeah, he was another guy just came to play, he's the guy who, makes a difference in games like that. He had, two like pick six steals.
Yeah.
Those were you at big times too.
Yeah.
Um and but coming out of that second half, like you knew Nebraska was gonna get Purdue's best punch in the second half. Like
Yep.
I was sitting next to Amy Just, and I said, Nebraska was up 11, and I said Purdue is gonna tie this game at some point. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
never ended up doing that. They got within one. They did not tie it, but and so Purdue comes out, hits seven of its first eight shots, 4 3-pointers, and
Of
Nebraska,
course.
yeah, Nebraska weathered the storm. It, they fought back, hit some shots. CJ Wilcher was huge in the second half. So was
Yeah.
Keisei Tominaga. And just a scene at the end of that game. There are so many
Yeah.
things that will just like stick in my mind. Rink Mass dribbling out the clock as Casey tries to get him to pass him the ball so he can put up one last 3-pointer, which the crowd would have lost its mind if he had
Yeah.
taken
Yeah.
and made that. Casey and Jawan Gary waving the crowd onto the court like as time expired. It's just so many images from that night, and that's kind of the romantic, college basketball side. There's
Yeah.
also the tangible side, which is, Nebraska beat the number one team in the country. And, for a team that's, as of right now is probably on the bubble for the NCAA tournament,
Yep.
that's a win that gets you into the field over a team with a similar resume,
Yeah.
like, so I mean,
Yeah.
just in so many ways that then in so many different ways. The first win for this program over a number one team in 41 years.
Yeah.
The tangible, that was a huge step to making the NCAA tournament. There is so much about that game that will kind of go down in Nebraska basketball lore.
Yeah. I could not and obviously Casey's done this all year. But I could not get over I want to say like maybe not back to back possessions, but it was like within a few possessions of each other, he peeled off his screen,
Yeah,
curled, and just like chucked it.
yeah,
No space whatsoever.
no,
Just just flung it and catched it. And those were the like I said, those were the like few possessions where I was like, yeah, it's over. Like
yeah.
it's
When
done.
you're getting
They're not.
those.
Yeah, I was like, they are not losing this game. Um, but are you telling me that these long-lasting images should have never happened because there should be order to a court storming?
Okay. Let me defend Matt Painter for a second, who I
Okay,
covered
okay,
for a
okay.
season. He made it clear, and I knew as he was going on this riff that parts of it were gonna get taken out of context.
Okay.
He said I like court storming. Like, he, made that clear. And he had a good point about, just that, I don't know, they need some way of like clearing a path for like the visiting team
Yeah.
to get off. And um, you know, that's also every Purdue road loss in the past 3 years has come with a court storming. So they are
Yep.
plenty familiar with. I understood where he was coming from. I knew the way the internet worked, and people were gonna, dunk on that quote.
Yeah.
I got it. The Yeah. Shoot, I had something and I lost it to follow up on
Yeah.
that.
It kind of sounds like with that, because I don't follow Purdue like on the day to day. But it kind of sounds like with that, he was this was like the culmination of something more general
Yeah.
instead of like, oh my God, Pinnacle Bank Arena. Like, what are we
Yeah.
doing? Like, it just kind of seemed like he was like, man, we just got stormed for the X time
Yeah.
in the last 3 years. Like,
Yeah. And
that's kind of what it seemed like.
yeah, and to his point of like, someone someone's gonna get hurt, there's gonna be an incident. It made me think of when Notre Dame stormed the field on USC this past season. I remember
Yeah, yeah,
someone ran
yeah,
up to Caleb Williams and was,
yeah,
had his phone out, like Caleb Williams kept his composure. At some point, that's going to happen with someone a little more hot headed, someone
yeah.
pissed off after a game who's going to shove a fan or something like that. There's going to be some sort of incident like that, and I think that's what Painter was getting at. There was an interesting moment earlier this season when Purdue lost to Northwestern.
Yeah.
I forget if it was Northwestern or Purdue, but one of them was shooting free throws with like 2 seconds left, up 6 points, and Painter just pulled his team off the court and got him out of there before they could get
Yeah.
trampled by the court storming.
I'm pro Storm. I don't know
Oh,
if anybody.
100%.
Yeah, is
Yeah.
any are there anti-Storm people out
I
there?
mean, the conferences that fine football teams
Yeah,
for,
the
I
SEC. What
guess.
are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I was fortunate enough to before joining the Creighton beat, I was covering Oklahoma State. And so I was fortunate enough to be a part of the Bedlam storming this year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and there's just like, yeah, I'm pro storm in any capacity. Volleyball, send it. Tennis, sure. Basketball, absolutely. Like, yeah, I'm pro storm in most capacities.
Nebraska got a big win in bowling the other day. I don't.
Storm,
That's the
yeah,
yeah. Storm the bowling alley.
storm the lanes. Yeah, I don't know. What do you do there?
I don't
Everybody go
know.
get a bowling ball and roll it at the same
Yeah,
time.
do you run down the lanes? Those are so, they like those are so like oiled and like polished. I think you just slip. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Oh my goodness. Who's Nebraska got this week?
Nebraska's got Iowa. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah. Should be interesting. I was, in doing some preliminary research, I think their underlying numbers are a little better than their record. Um,
yeah,
yeah, I guess I should be asking you. You have seen Iowa in person
yeah.
this season. What should Nebraska be? What sticks out about Iowa, having seen them? Granted, it was a while ago, and you saw maybe Iowa's best performance this season.
Yeah, I think I saw I probably for about 30 minutes. I think we saw Iowa at their best. So I actually hadn't made it to Omaha yet. But I watched that game because I had like already joined. Yeah, so I watched that game. Um, was not here for the 9 p.m. tip off in Omaha, which just sounds nuts in hindsight. Um, but yeah, I mean that was the best version of Iowa. Had a big lull in the second half, otherwise picked it up. But I mean their guard play was okay. I'm gonna butcher his last name. Ben Crikey. Cricky.
Cricky, I think it's Cricky.
Yeah.
Crikey's fun. It sounds Australian, but
Crikey. Yeah.
Crikey.
I mean Ben Crikey. Yeah. Um, he it was kind of like as he went, Iowa went. I don't know if that's been the case since they played Creighton. Um, and then Tony Perkins and Patrick McCaffrey, they were all kind of instrumental that night too. Again, I don't know what they've done since then. But that's what I do know from when they played Creighton. They wanted to move the ball, they wanted to run, they wanted to shoot. They just haven't done that opportunistically. Um, so they've had chances to really strike on some teams, and those are the nights where they do not shoot well. And then the nights where they're like playing a team that they don't need to are the nights that they shoot well. And so they're like taking care of the teams that they're supposed to. But maybe when they get in some of those back and forth games, they aren't quite sure how to handle it, or maybe they just haven't pulled one of those out. So they're kind of not used to it. Battle tested, I guess, is what you could call it. Um, but I personally think Nebraska should be fine. Um, and I'm not basing that on the Nebraska I saw in person a little over a
Yes.
month ago. I'm basing that on the Nebraska literally at every other point this season. Um, because yeah, I mean Jayskers will probably like this. Pure Creighton fans will probably hate it. But Nebraska, it's like good for the state, it's good for the sport, it's good for the Big Ten. It's obviously good for Nebraska that they are having the season that they are. And it's not really like this isn't a fluke.
Yeah.
Um, Fred went out and got the pieces that he felt were necessary to kind of mold around the pieces they already had and what they wanted to do this year. And literally every single person, it seems like from afar, has bought into their role on the
Yeah.
Huskers.
Absolutely.
And that it is that's special. It's so hard to bring people in. Rick Mass from Bradley could easily, so easily be like, "No, I'm gonna get mine." Like I
Yeah.
came from a mid-major. I'm gonna put up 15, 20 shots a game, whether I'm making them or not, and you're gonna like it. And he doesn't do that. Like not a single one of their transfers does it. And then I think the most important thing is you have guys like Casey, guys like Juwan Gary, who aren't scared to take over when need be.
Yeah.
Saw it from CJ Wilcher
Yeah.
against Purdue. Like, and everyone else is okay with letting them cook for just a
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a special brand of basketball. That'll be fun to watch them the rest of the year. I think they'll take care of Iowa. Who's their midweek next week, or do they have one?
They got Rutgers after Iowa.
Okay, that'll
Well,
be
at the rack. Which I mean, Rutgers isn't great,
yeah,
but
yeah,
beat Indiana.
yeah.
Indiana's also not very good. Um, I don't know. It's interesting because like like the kind of logical analytical part of my mind says yes, Nebraska is a better team than Iowa. Nebraska should beat Iowa.
Yeah.
But then, another part just says, this is the Big Ten. Chaos happens. Teams beat the number one team in the country and then lose to mediocre teams after. Like, I don't know. I feel like I say this every year, but the more Big Ten basketball I watch and the further we get into the season, the less I know about the Big Ten. Like the like
Oh,
thing
for
things
sure.
things make sense early in the season when no one has played any games and everything is just on paper. Things make no sense as the season goes on. But no, to your point about guys buying into their roles, that's been a big thing. Nebraska that Fred and players have talked about since since before the season, since Big Ten media days, and I think it kind of points to this like the recruiting strategy that Nebraska has had over the past few years, which is they've said, okay, we're not gonna get there's some exceptions like Bryce McGowan's, but generally, this is a program that isn't going to land those, 5-star
Yeah.
guys, the IMG Academy or Eli Rice went to IMG Academy, bad comparison, but, those types of guys who have been, uh, you know, who have, been on teams' radars forever and, have, those offers from Kansas and Kentucky and whatever, and they've said, they've gone after guys like Rink Mast, guys like Bryce Williams, who have been around, who are good enough to play Big Ten basketball, but weren't when they were freshmen, didn't
Yeah.
get that opportunity right from the jump. So, Nebraska gives them, a shot at, the more kind of, big name college basketball that they wanted. And in turn, they provide a veteran presence.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really interesting thing. You really saw that with Rink Mast. He said at the beginning of the year that part of the reason he came to Nebraska was, to be part of that bigger stage in the Big Ten, and to go again, have the bigger matchups. Go against the guys like Zach Edey. He didn't say him by name when he was saying that, but he did name drop Edey in Sioux Falls, and someone asked him about Tyler Bilodeau. He said, every big man's different. I'm doing different things against him against Ryan Kalkbrenner, and then different from Kalk when I face Edey. Like it was clearly on his mind. And then
Yeah.
we saw from the jump the other night, he goes right after Edey. He steps out, knocks down a three on the first possession, puts his shoulder into him, and hits a hook shot. Like he was going after Zach Edey, and he played. Rinkmass played like a guy who had been waiting like for this moment to
Yeah.
go against the National Player of the Year.
Well, if I remember right, which Nebraska overall struggled against Creighton. Like, talk about off nights, right? Like big off night. Creighton's defense, a little bit of both, I think. But Rink Mask kind of struggled to get up and under Ryan Kalkbrenner like
Yeah,
he
yeah,
does most big men, which that's probably my favorite part about Rink Mask. Um, because he'll lure into contact and then yeah, just hit a baseline spin or step through or something and go up and under somebody. But he kind of struggled to do that against Ryan Kalkbrenner. And I think in some ways that might have helped his matchup with Zach Edey. Edey is not Ryan Kalkbrenner. Ryan Kalkbrenner is not Zach Edey. But some of the things that I'd be willing to bet some of the things that Ryan Kalkbrenner did defensively exposed some things or opened the peripheral of things for Rink Mast that he probably kept in the bank. It seems like he kept in the bank for at least a little bit. and maybe used to help the Huskers down Purdue. No
Yeah,
clue. That's just me spitballing, I guess.
that's a that's a
Yeah,
good
I
point. Yeah,
yeah I mentioned it a little bit ago, but while we're talking about Purdue, still lingering on Purdue, I think I think the Jays are going to get their chance at a number one team next week.
you
Now,
think you are. Go on.
a lot can happen, as we have talked about this on this here podcast. You never really know who's going to beat anyone. I don't really think that's Big Ten specific. We saw that in the Big East. Butler beat Marquette this week.
Yeah.
Um, we saw it in the Big 12. UCF beat Kansas. No one's safe. No one
Iowa
is
State
dominant.
beat Houston,
Iowa State
and
beat Houston.
Iowa State's good, but
Right.
Houston.
Yeah, and it like nobody is safe. Nobody's dominant this year. Um, and I think with the way things have fallen this week, and if things continue to fall this way, then yeah, UConn's going to be our number one uh next week, and the Jays have a trip to Stores on Wednesday. So uh, road wins are a lot tougher of a spot to be in to upset the number one team. Um, but I think UConn still and that I mean they're good enough to where one player doesn't define their night really, but they'll be without Donovan Clingan, I believe. He's missed the past couple of weeks. His timetable was like right around next week. So who knows if that'll be Klingan's first game back, if that'll be his last game out, if he'll be out for a little bit longer, no clue. But that would be a really, really, really big spot for for the Jays to kind of get probably a marquee win. That'd be their best win of the year, I think. Alabama's good. The way in which they won that game was good, but lost to Nova at home on Doug McDermott night, lost to Marquette by 5 points and a slew of turnovers, like in a game they should have and could have won. Um, and then, shorthanded Providence, they're still going to be a tough out in the Big East either way. But this would a win over UConn, excluding the fact that the Huskies might be the number one team in the country next week. That I think that would be Creighton's best win of the season. I don't think
Yeah,
that's a stretch to say
no,
whatsoever.
not at all. And I think to go back to what we were talking about, in the early minutes of this of Creighton kind of getting back on track, that would be that would kind of
Yeah,
be the defining like okay, what we saw from this team in like mid late December was an aberration, kind of like how they stumbled around a similar point of the season
yeah,
last year. That'd be like okay, this is still a very good team. This team's back. Got it.
yeah. I think so. And then, yeah, I don't. You're gonna get. I don't know. Seton Hall's, I think, shocked a few people. Um, I don't know if anybody quite thought Shaheen Holloway would have them playing this well this quickly, but he does. Um, and so Seton Hall right after UConn is gonna be a grind. But it all starts with St. John's.
Yeah.
So we'll see. This will be Rick Pitino's first time in the CHI Health Center, I believe.
Wow.
So I'm sure they're gonna let him have it, and I'm sure he'll eat it up. I'm sure he'll give it back.
I think I gotta imagine Rick Pitino enjoys that more than the average coach. Like,
Yeah. Him, Dan Hurley, they're guys who embrace being the villain,
yeah,
embrace being the like very animated, like
yeah,
good old ball coach. They eat that up for sure. So it'll be fun.
yeah,
Saturday will be fun in CHI for
oh, yeah,
sure.
yeah. Well,
Mhm.
I think we covered a lot of ground in that roughly half hour.
Yeah. Hopefully people are still listening to us. No.
Yeah, I think we kept it entertaining enough. We talked about court storming. Everyone loves court stormings,
Yeah, let
except
us
for
know
the
your
SEC.
opinions on yeah, let us know your opinion on court storming, pro
Yeah,
court storm, anti court storm. And I guess if
The
you're
the
really
the
weird,
Matt Painter stands pro court storm, but needs some
yeah,
order and regulation.
yeah. Are you like SEC court storm? Like, sure, I'm for it, but they need to be fined. That's such a weird hill to
Yeah,
die on,
yeah,
but maybe there's a couple of those out there. I don't know. Or
yeah.
yeah, we're pro court storm in the half court press pod.
We are. That is an official stance. All right. Well, with that, thank you for listening. Have a good week. I'm sure we'll be back next week after I'm sure another eventful few days of college basketball. This has been Half Court Press.